Hello, everybody. Tommy here, World at War Comics, and I am reloading my live that I had with Jason Aaron. If you missed our live, no worries. I'm reposting it, and I am going to make it available for all of you to check out. I had an absolute blast talking to Jason, award-winning Eisner Harvey Award. You know him, Southern Bastards. He has done so many cool titles like Conan the Barbarian, Thor. You name it, he's done a lot of it. Of course, over on the DC side, he is currently on Absolute Superman. Over at IDW, he is on TMNT, and he has his latest title coming out, Bug Wars, that you do not want to miss. If you love Conan the Barbarian, you're going to absolutely love Bug Wars. It is phenomenal. I got a chance to read the first two issues, and I could tell you, you definitely want to jump on that. It arrives in comic book shops this Wednesday, the 12th. Make sure that you grab your copy because my understanding from the distributor level, they are sold out. So if you don't get to your comic book shop and you don't pick up your issue number one, you're going to have to wait for that second printing, which should be coming in the next month or so. But check it out. It is a blast, and I think you're going to absolutely love it. All right, without further ado, here is Jason and I. Enjoy. All right, we are live. Hello, Jason. Thank you so much for joining me today. If anybody's watching and you're not sure who this person is, award-winning writer, creator, Jason Aaron. I could go through all the things that you have touched, but it might take up the entire time we have together, Jason. But I mean, Star Wars, I think my first experience of you is actually Conan the Barbarian, and you're back on Conan with Savage Sword. Obviously, Namor, man, Punisher, and then obviously Absolute Superman. That's made a little bit of noise lately. It seems to be fairly popular, huh? To say understatement.
Yeah. All the absolute stuff is doing really well right now, it seems like.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. And then obviously you have this new title through Image Comics called Bug Wars that we certainly want to talk about. Actually, issue one will be available this Wednesday in all of your comic book shops. And because you gave me a little sneak peek, I could tell you, you definitely want to jump on this title. It's going to be, I think, action-packed, a lot of heart with that family. Yeah, incredible. But before we jump into that, Jason, I would love to know, how are things going? You seem really busy. I appreciate you spending some time with me. But how are things going right now in your world?
Things are good. Yeah, it's last year was a great year. It was kind of the first full year of me being outside my Marvel exclusive and kind of working for everybody under the sun. So there was a lot of stuff for me that was new, writing. Got to start writing for DC for the first time and doing a Batman book, doing Absolute Superman, doing Namor, Marvel, which is a book I've wanted to do a long time, launching Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and wrote an Uncle Scrooge book for Marvel, which was a huge blast. And that was a fun year. It definitely gets busy when you're kind of working for that many companies. I think at one point I was working for like 6 different companies at the same time in some, form or another. So that gets a bit busy, even though I'm mostly doing smaller projects. I'm trying to not sign on for a bunch of ongoing commitments and hope to be on Absolute Superman in particular for a long time. So yeah, I'm right now. I'm busy. I just turned in the something else that was brand new. Turned it in today. It's a thing for Marvel that another character that I've been a fan of for a long time that I've wanted to write that I finally got to. So I'm busy, still busy doing new stuff, but kind of not too busy. I'm still trying to keep a handle on things so I don't wear myself out.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, I would love to kind of go back in time real quick, and then we could come back to today if that's all right. But
Sure.
I would love for you to maybe share with us where the passion for storytelling began in your life, and was there one or two people in your life that really helped guide you into that passion?
I mean, it's kind of always been there. I think as long as I can remember, I've always loved to write. Well, I liked to draw when I was really little, and I kind of started, doing my own comics, just like writing and drawing comics on kind of lined notebook paper and then stapling them together, like that kind of that kind of stuff. So the drawing part sort of went away, and pretty early, and I I remember feeling like I was a pretty good artist when I was a small child, but I never got any better. So now I can still draw like a pretty good fourth grader maybe. Um, but I think I had good teachers. I remember a really good English teacher like in sixth grade who encouraged me to write, um, and just kind of had that hunger, and it never went away. I think, but a lot of this you can kind of see reflected in Bug Wars. Like even though it's this weird book about insects and tiny barbarians, it's also a very personal story. It's literally set in the backyard that I played in when I was 10 years old, which is the age I was when I started to get into comics in a pretty big way. Is a lot of those DC books from like the early 80s that were big for me. So I think I love to read the stuff I was starting to read, um, and spending all my time in that backyard playing with toys, running through the woods, making up stories in my head. I really think that was kind of the beginning of me, you know, wanting to do this for a living, like wanting to grow up and just spend all my days basically wandering around that yard, making up fantasy sagas in my brain.
That's incredible. And then when you finally did get into comics, did you grow up more of a Marvel guy or a DC guy? Do you remember, or was it a blend of both?
No, I was for sure more of a DC guy, in those days. The like New Teen Titans was a big book for me. Atari Force, Blue Devil, Alan Moore Swamp Thing. Of course, like once Dark Knight Returns came along, and Crisis was huge for me, and all the stuff that kind of launched out of that, like the Superman and Wonder Woman, and I've been reading Batman, um, monthly, going back to like kind of those pre-crisis days, like, so yeah, it was mostly DC stuff for me. I lived in a small towns in Alabama, and we moved when I was in like the seventh grade, and there was one other guy in my grade who liked comics, and he was a big Marvel guy. So we'd get into arguments about who was better, the X-Men or the Teen Titans. But it was I think the first Marvel book that I fell in love with. It was either, I don't remember which one came out first. It was either the Mutant Massacre stuff and X-Men. That's when I started reading X-Men, and the Kraven's Last Hunt story and Spider-Man. That was the first time I started reading Spider-Man.
Those are pretty good ones to begin with on the Marvel
Yeah,
universe for sure. Now,
yeah, still two of my favorites.
yeah, exactly. Now, when you professionally signed on with Marvel, right? You had an exclusive. Was there any disappointment that it wasn't DC since you grew up with DC, or were you just happy to be there?
I mean, DC could have had me if they had wanted me at the time. Honestly, I mean, I was at DC. I mean, I was doing Vertigo stuff,
That's right. Yeah.
which I loved. I mean, it's DC, but also it wasn't. Like Vertigo was kind of its own little clubhouse within DC Comics. And I did one DCU thing back in those days. I did a Penguin one shot as part of the Joker's Asylum, um, books, which was a lot of fun. Got to work with the late Jason Pearson. And when Marvel offered me an exclusive, I'd started doing some Wolverine stuff. I think they'd offered me Ghost Rider, and they offered me an exclusive. I told my editors at Vertigo, I said, like, I wasn't trying to get them to start a bidding war over me. I was just letting them know, like, hey, they're offering me this. And they kind of run it up the flagpole, and there was not really an offer that came back, so it kind of made my decision easy. I think if they had come back with an interesting offer, maybe I would have stayed there. I don't know, because again, I think in terms of my affections and knowledge of the characters, I was more deeply rooted in DC than I was at Marvel. But in those days, I also figured out pretty quickly that the real flesh and blood people involved in the situation are more important than the fictional characters. So, um, Axel Alonso was the guy who brought me in to Marvel, and he and I had very similar sensibilities, and he put me on books like Wolverine and Ghost Rider and Black Panther and kind of so much of the stuff I did in those early days. So that was really more important equation to my success, I think, than me just wanting, to write Batman or whoever. And I still, that's kind of been my guiding light through my careers. You don't chase after characters. Characters aren't going anywhere, like you got to wait till it's the right situation and moment in time.
Well, now that you said that, is there a character that the right time hasn't taken place, but you would love to do it?
Oh yeah, I think that's a long list.
Yeah.
I mean, I say that I've also very much kind of tried to not walk around comics with a list. I just want to do this. I just want to do that. But that said, there clearly are characters that are special to me. I mean, Uncle Scrooge was one of those. I never thought I would get the chance to write that character, and then it happened last year. So yeah, there's other characters, like there's still some at Marvel that I've written most every notable character you could think of at Marvel in some spot or another. But there's still a couple that I haven't, that I would like to do something bigger with at some point. And of course at DC there's lots, because I kind of just started getting to play in that sandbox. And beyond that, yeah, like I said, just this week I kind of checked one box that the character that I knew I wanted to do something with at some point. There's also stuff, I love crossover comics. Anytime anybody does, this character teaming up with that character from different companies or different genres or whatever, I'm there. So every time, Tarzan teams up with anybody or the Predator goes after anyone, I love all that stuff. And I love the Alien film. So I think I would like to do an Alien comic at some point. I don't know what that would be. I don't have a story, but I would say, that's one of the ones on my list that I'd like to check at some point.
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to talk to Philip Kennedy Johnson, and he also is a big fan. So yeah,
yeah, his Alien book was really good. I liked that.
Very good.
That was like the beginning of the Marvel stuff, and the book that Hickman and Assad are doing right now is really, really great too.
Yeah, incredible. Well, then we jump over to obviously Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I think a lot of people were surprised when your name popped up on that one. We're already through 6 issues, so I feel like it's going really fast. I don't know if you're feeling the same way around Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, I mean, it all feels like it goes fast once the train kind of gets up and running. I mean, it's one of those where it feels like it takes a long time, like you're working on it for a long time before you can talk to anybody about it. But then once it's coming out, it seems like those months fly by. And yeah, it's been a long experience of working on the Turtles and getting to work with a lot of different artists over the course of those first 6 issues, and now, with 6. Juan Ferreira comes on as the main guy, and he's working on issue 8 right now, and just every issue he does just looks better and better and better. He's absolutely nailing the tone of this story. So yeah, that's it's been fun after being at Marvel for like 15 years and doing a lot of big stuff there that I thoroughly enjoyed. It was nice to be able to step outside that and do things that did feel surprising, like you said. I mean, Turtles was a book I never really thought about having a chance to write those characters. I enjoyed those characters. I read that book going back to when it was, the big oversized black and white Mirage Studios days, but kind of never crossed my mind that I would get an opportunity to write those characters. I think see it, like reading the, I've been reading the IDW book from when it first started and enjoyed that, and then seeing what Tom Waltz and Kevin Eastman did with the Last Ronin stuff was really cool. And that was the first time I kind of started to think like, oh, I might have a story I could tell there. And then, yeah, then IDW gave me the call.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, when you, one thing that I find really interesting, you are on quite a few titles at the same time. Like, how do you plan out your day, and how do you plan out each title? I feel like, do you ever send like a turtle script to DC on accident? I just feel like you're doing so much. It's incredible how you get it all done.
No, I mean, I've been doing this now for almost 20 years, so it's just a muscle that you flex it every week. It gets stronger. So I'm usually trying to write a script per week, and then just the next week, one week I'm writing Superman, and the next week I'll write Turtles or something different. So you're kind of just jumping around from week to week to different things. But I like that. I like being able to, I'm not just like doing the same thing week after week after week. Every week it's kind of a different challenge and different creative muscles you get to flex. So I enjoy that. But yeah, I mean, you gotta have some sense of ability to manage a schedule in there. Like for me, I've literally still got one of those big. I got a huge desk, which I've had for years. Most every comic I've ever written has been written on this desk. So I just, this year I tried doing the physical planner last year, and I didn't like that. So I went back to the old school, giant ass desk calendar. So I can look at it. So I can look at my month and see like, oh, this is any travel I've got. This is what's due when, just to try to keep all the, like I said, it got complicated last year when I was working for so many different companies, because you find yourself in a situation where literally no one else on the face of the earth knows what all I am doing except for me, because I'm working for kind of so many different editors. So it that got complicated at times. So I'm trying to not fall down any holes like that.
Let's not do that, Jason. Let's not do
Right.
that. Yeah. And then I would love to talk about your return to Conan. Like I said, some of the first stuff that I've read from you was your Conan run. How is that kind of returning? And was that a little bit of a surprise, or did you already kind of have a story that if you ever got a chance to return, you would love to tell?
I mean, I think I could write Conan, off and on for the rest of my life and never run out of stories. I love that character, and Conan was such an important part of my childhood. To kind of discovered those Robert E. Howard stories in paperbacks at sort of the used bookstore in my small town around the same time I was getting into comics. So, and just devoured them and loved them. So that character holds a special place in my heart, and for years, pretty much as long as I've been in comics, Conan. Like I said, I didn't walk around with a list of characters for the most part that I wanted to write, but if I'd had a list, Conan would have been at the top of it. So for years, I've wanted the chance to do Conan, and as soon as I got wind that Marvel was getting the rights, I, basically emailed CB Cebulski and told him, look, if you don't hire me for this, I'll fight whoever you do hire. And sent him the picture of like, this is these are the shelves of Conan books that sit next to my desk that I read when I was 12 years old. So I very much wanted to do Conan stories, was really proud of the stuff that I did at Marvel. And Conan the Barbarian and King Conan. And when I wrote King Conan, the end of that one, it's kind of, if you read the end of it, it's sort of it's a real ending. And I felt like, well, I kind of already knew that the license was going away from Marvel. And I felt like, well, if this is the last time I write Conan, that's okay. I feel like I said a lot. But at the same time, if the opportunity does come up, I feel like I could find more to say. So I kind of always, knew there was more stuff down there I would like to do if it ever felt right. And the Conan rights holders, the Heroic Signatures people are great, and I had a good relationship with them. So they reached out to me, as they were moving over to Titan, and I pitched them King Conan story that turned into those 2 issues of Savage Swords, basically like a 4-issue miniseries. It's 2 giant chunks. Yeah. So I loved I loved that old Savage Sword Conan magazine. Had a huge box of those over with my comics, and so I love the chance of getting to do. I've never written a black and white comic before, so that was cool. And getting to do something in that magazine format, and working with Jeff Isherwood, who done so many great Conan comics over the years. And it's kind of, if you read that and if you read like the Conan the Barbarian stuff I did at Marvel, it's a bit of a companion piece, I would say. And that the Conan, the life and death of Conan I did at Marvel was the main bad guy was an evil witch. And with this one, it's sort of Conan running up against another witch, as an older, aging King Conan, and he's had a lot of experiences with witches and sorcerers, and they've all gone badly. But he kind of starts to see things from a different perspective in this story. So I wanted to do a story that was a bit more nuanced portrayal of a witch character, and again, writing that story, I felt kind of the same as I did with the previous King Conan, where if this is it, if I never get to write this character again, that's cool. I'm happy, but if another opportunity comes along, I could definitely come up with more. I feel like sort of like the way Garth Ennis continues to go back and find awesome Punisher stories to tell, or awesome Nick Fury stories to tell that all kind of weave together. I feel like I think I could do that with Conan the rest of my life and be perfectly happy.
Well, I hope that you return because of 2 issues where you did kind of take over the entire magazine, and I absolutely loved it. And it did bring a lot of memories from the last time that you wrote. So hopefully we get a little bit more of that too from you, Jason. That'd be awesome.
Thanks. Maybe someday. There's nothing on the books right now, but we'll see.
Yeah. And then lastly, before we jump into Bug Wars, because that's what we really want to cover, this has, I think... I don't know, when you sat down with Kelly and Scott, you all were kind of working together on this whole Absolute universe. Obviously, I think the thought was this could be really big. Did you think it would be as big as it is? I mean, if you look at the top 10 comics, and again, we don't get a lot of good readings anymore like we used to on, what's selling the best every single week. But the readings that we do get, those 3 titles are in the top 10 almost every single time. So, I mean, obviously, either we're bringing in new readers or you're just sparking interest that maybe wasn't there before with these new stories. But it has been huge. I mean, all over everybody's feeds on Instagram and Blue Sky and whatnot. Did you know it would be that big when you started this?
I mean, I never really think about that part of it. I mean, I think I knew, when Scott and I first started talking, and I got excited about the thought of what we could do, and it just seeming like the right time for something like that. I mean, yeah, I definitely felt like, oh, this could be a big thing. Like this could hit really big. And then as the books started to come together, looking at them and being like, oh, these are all like really good too. So yeah, I think everybody felt really excited. We were all exciting each other with the things we were doing. So you always hope that if everybody who's working on this feels excited and joyful about it, you always hope that'll translate to the audience, to the retailers and everybody else. And in this case, it very, very much has.
Yeah, I would say absolutely. It's been a fun title, but all the Absolute, I think, has driven a lot of new excitement. All in general, though, I feel like I'm more of a DC fan than I am a Marvel fan, although I love it all. New 52, when it first came out, I was really excited. But man, All In has been just a blast. And then to have Absolute going on at the same time that All In, I just feel like if you're a DC fan, you got to be happy with everything that's going on right now. It's been a lot of fun, and the titles are incredible.
Yeah, I think it's an exciting time for DC. It's wild for me because having just kind of come over there, I didn't really have any relationships with anybody. Nobody, very few people kind of left there from when I was at Vertigo years ago. So it was all very new and fresh to me. And then you've seen other people popping up like Dan Slott. Just announced doing a new Superman Unlimited book, and so and then people like Scott and Josh Williamson and Tom Taylor and Tom King, of course, who've been there for years. So it's a really cool mix of creators, and right now it feels like, and everybody kind of doing cool things, like you said, in both the Absolute Universe and the main DCU stuff. I love all the stuff that Mark Waid is doing, like what he's been doing on World's Finest, and now seeing what he's doing on Justice League is really cool. The new Absolute books that are coming out, like Jeff Lemire's Flash and Al Ewing's Green Lantern, which is mind blowing, and Dennis Camp's Martian Manhunter, which I think is going to blow people away. It's just so much cool stuff happening at DC right now. It feels like a good time to be there in the midst of it.
Yeah, I agree. Met Rafa over the weekend at MegaCon. Jason, awesome guy, and his work on Absolute Superman is crazy. He's so excited for what he gets to draw next without any spoilers. But
good, yeah. So I was hoping I could go to MegaCon, and I've never met Rafa in person, but I wasn't able to make it this year. But hopefully, he and I can get together at a different convention later this year. We're working on it.
That'd be incredible, yeah. And what can you talk about Brainiac, the build-up, and Lex Luthor eventually? Can you share anything, or is it still a little too early in the storyline to be taking on some of these other characters?
Well, I mean, as for Brainiac, I think you can see everything, just the little bits you've seen so far. He's sort of a guy who kind of keeping into the shadows and manipulating things kind of from behind the throne. As to who's sitting on the throne, well, you'll get the answer to that very soon, and you'll get more of Brainiac's origin in issue 7, which is kind of the more of a standalone issue, but will basically be the beginning of the second arc on the book. And I mean, it should be clear just from that first time we saw him in issue 1 that this is like a darker, creepier, more sadistic version of Brainiac. So I think he's unlike any version of the character that we've seen so far. And we've only begun to just wait till you read issue 7 and you'll see kind of how truly terrifying he is. As for Lex Luthor, I very intentionally wanted to steer away from Lex in this opening arc, just because I feel like so many times you see like, here's a brand new take on Superman. It's Superman fighting Lex. So I wanted to do something different. And like I said, we still haven't really shown who the main villain of this story is, and you'll get that revelation soon. You can guarantee that we'll see Lex at some point. I know what that story is. It's a question of like when it comes. And as for what it is, it should be obvious so far with this book that any character we meet that we know that we normally associate with Superman, whether that's his usual allies like Lois and Jimmy, or even enemies like Lex, nobody is where they're quote unquote supposed to be. Nobody is where we expect them to be. Nothing has worked out the same for people in this universe as it did in the other one. So that will hold true for Lex as well. The question is just, where is he and what is that story? And it's one I'm excited about. You'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, yeah. Fair enough, Jason. Fair enough. But obviously, a lot of excitement around that title. And then here's my good friend Juan. He was supposed to be my co-host today, but he's at work. But
Sorry,
he's a
Juan.
huge fan. Yeah, yeah. It's okay. It's okay. But
So you're at work, but you can still tune in to the live
yeah,
stream.
yeah. On his phone, probably just seeing he knew that we were meeting. So
Well, don't get in trouble,
yeah.
Juan. Don't get
Yeah,
fired
don't
from
get in
work.
trouble, Juan. Don't do that, man. But he's a huge, huge fan as well. So he was a little sad. And then we have one person wanted to ask a question about your shirt, if that's okay. What's your favorite Disney ride and resort?
Oh man, that's a good question. That's a whole podcast in and of itself. My favorite ride, my favorite ride for years was Splash Mountain. I haven't gotten to ride the new version, the Tiana's ride. I'm excited to ride that. It's probably still going to be my favorite ride. But I would say um, my other answer to that is Pirates at Disneyland, like the version of Pirates at Disneyland. I love Pirates at Disney World too, but it's once you ride the original one, like, oh, that's what it's supposed to be. Like the one at Worlds was a bit. They didn't build Pirates initially, and people showed up at the park and were like, where's Pirates? So they did kind of a bit more last minute version, but the one at Land is like the true version, and I makes me, even though I've ridden it so many times, makes me happy every single time. My favorite resort, um, the Disney Polynesian is definitely my favorite. I mean, I'm a big tiki guy. I love Trader Sam's.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's. I mean, I love Animal Kingdom Lodge. I love the Wilderness Lodge. But Polynesian, being able to grab a drink and a pineapple and get some Dole Whip right outside, and then hop on the monorail. Doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah, the Dole Whip is something to die for sure. That's incredible stuff. All right, let's jump into Bug Wars, if that's all right, Jason, because
Sure.
it is amazing. I want to thank you for entrusting me with a couple issues. I appreciate that. I had a blast reading them. Knowing your background in Conan, I will say that I had a little Conan fuzzies in my back as I was reading it, which I
Oh,
absolutely
sure.
loved. The whole world building that's taking place just in 2 issues is absolutely incredible. You have the house itself, which is its own little world, and you can see the effect that it has on especially the brother. But once he gets in the backyard, especially when you read issue 1 and then you jump into issue 2, you're like, holy crap, man. Issue 3 has got to be out of this world. So certainly don't want to give too much away because obviously it hasn't even come out yet. But man, if you're watching this, this title I think is going to be one that you don't want to miss. Are you okay if I just share the cover and maybe the first page just so people could kind of get a feel
Sure.
for
Yeah,
it?
of
Are you
course.
okay with that? Yeah, I
Yeah.
just want to be careful and I don't want to give too much away. I am 50 years old, so I will say that anything technological, I usually screw up. Here we go.
Well, I can grab a physical copy if need be.
I think I got it right here. Let's see here. I work from home too, Jason. So, I could take a break kind of whenever and then jump on for something like this, which is
Cool.
always fun. There we go. So I have a bunch of work stuff open, which is never good.
Well, I got a bunch of work stuff open too.
Do you? I'm sure you do. I think a lot of people would like to see your workspace.
Well, this is it. I just moved
Oh,
late
did
last
you?
year, so this is the new space. This is
Where are you
my.
at?
I mean, I didn't move far. I moved from one part of the Kansas City suburbs to another,
Oh,
but
gotcha.
I
Okay.
still have a lot of stuff. I'll give you a
Do
peek,
you?
making sure there's nothing I don't want anybody to see. But
Yeah, yeah. Don't get in
it's
trouble.
like all
Oh, that.
it's all long boxes that stretch
I
forever, and
think
then you got some spinner rack over there with some bug wars on it.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
Um,
As you can see, I'm having issues, but
well, here I'll grab a copy.
okay, sounds good, Jason.
Um, yeah, this is. I mean, yeah, there's definitely a lot of Conan that went into this because again, the roots of this book go back to when I was 10 years old,
Yeah.
playing in the yard, um, fall in love with comics, fallen in love with fantasy stories through Robert E. Howard's Conan. Um, and this book is set in that exact same yard. In the back, there's a map, which I kind of drew the original crappy version of the map, but this is like the cleaned up, pretty version.
Oh yeah.
This yard is like my backyard that I played in when I was 10 years old. Same house, same layout, same woods, everything.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, Conan was a part of what I was getting into back in those days. And this is, the book I'm doing with Mahmoud and Matt Wilson, the guys who the art team from my Conan the Barbarian and King Conan run. So you can
Look at
see we're
that.
tapping into some of that same
Ah,
widescreen epic fantasy
so beautiful.
stuff.
Yeah, Mahmoud just does. I mean, the art is just every page. I feel like is jumping out, and I feel like you're ducking from a sword. It's pretty incredible, the art and the detail. A lot of times you get the real detail in the actual character, but the background, just because a lot of artists have a lot going on, you don't get a lot of detail in the background. The
Right.
detail in this, you could get lost. And I'm wondering how many Easter eggs might be planted on some of these pages that you have to pay attention to that you might see later on in other issues
For
just
sure.
because of
Yeah.
the detail.
You're right. There is some of that. And yeah, it's a lot. Like we've been working on this for a while. We first started working on this a couple of years ago at this point. 'Cause it took a long time to develop this world and develop the different, within this yard, there are different tribes of mites.
Yeah.
So there are the mites that live with the ants and the ones that live with the beetles and the witches that live with the spiders, and they all look different. Their culture is different. So it took a long time to kind of flesh all that out, and for Mahmoud to design the look of all those characters and their worlds and the different locations we go within that world, and then yeah, to do. I mean, the book's called Bug Wars, and we kind of very much lean into the war part of that title, and you get that right out of the gate in issue 1 of it. Opens with a huge epic battle scene as some barbarians of the Beetle clan are invading an anthill
Yeah.
and fighting the armies of there's actual ants, which are sort of like the size that I picture them as like big dogs basically, and then there's the mites who live with them who are also part ant, like they're the only tribe of mites that are kind of interbred with ants, so they have ant characteristics. Some of them have 4 arms, and they all have antenna and that sort of thing. And so it's this epic battle of these two armies fighting, on an anthill. And again, we wanted to like sell the kind of stakes and the darkness and bloodiness and everything of this book kind of right out of the gate. Mahmoud and Matt killed it on that opening scene. We went back and forth on like the blood because these mites, a lot of them have green skin, and the ant mites have like bright red skin. So we weren't sure like, well, what color should their blood be? With they're different, they're different iterations of this with like them with different colored blood, but we ended up settling on like bright ass green, which I really love.
Yeah.
So that's just the beauty and power of Mahmoud and Matt Wilson together. I love what those two guys do together. And so I mean, the other thing is with this book, this is the kind of story that you would kind of set up. There you go. Kind of set up you would
Yeah.
normally equate to like a kid story, right? Like the main character is a kid. He gets shrunk down and he goes on an adventure in his own backyard. That's Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, right? but this is not Honey I Shrunk the Kids. This is the dark and brutal version of that kind of world. So these are bugs that will tear you apart and eat you, and mites who will rob you and gut you and leave you to be eaten by ants. And so it's a dark and brutal world hidden in the grass and the weeds of, again, this backyard in the backwoods of Alabama. So we also wanted you to make it pretty clear right in the opening of the book of like, this is not a kid's book. This
Yeah.
is main character is a kid, but this is not Honey I Shrunk the Kids. This is the Game of Thrones version.
There you go, right there. There's that page you were showing right there. Yeah, no, absolutely. You know what also has been really interesting? Obviously, I love the war part, everything that's happening in the backyard, but the family dynamic and what each of them are going through individually. You
Right.
have a very optimistic, hardworking mom. You have you have Sid, who obviously, and you want to be careful not to give anything away, but he's gone through some major trauma that he's having a hard time
Right.
overcoming, right? And he lives with it every day, and he's not sure. It doesn't feel like he has figured out how to live with that tragedy that he's gone through. And then you have Slade, who very much takes after his father, and really kind of loves that ability to experience new things and has a huge love for bugs. So hopefully I'm not saying too much, Jason, but
No.
man, that family dynamic that's taking place has been a lot of fun. Can you kind of talk a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, I mean that's the real heart of the story, right? It's like it's not just about these barbarians riding beetles and
Yeah.
killing ant people. I mean that's part of the fun of it is exploring this yard, but it's really the story of this kid and what he's going through. And yeah, his family's been through some trauma. His dad's died in this house that they've had to just return to because of the debts that he left them. And he was a famous entomologist who had amassed this incredible collection of the world's kind of most exotic insects. And all those insects are in this backyard. So that's why this one backyard in West Bottom, Alabama features the weirdest bugs from across the planet, right? Um, and his kid finds this mysterious amulet which suddenly shrinks him down, and he finds himself lost in his own backyard, literally right outside behind his house, but he might as well be a world away.
Yeah.
And then the issue 2 kind of sees him get taken prisoner and taken to Swarm City, which is the hive of the main hive of the beetle riders, the beetle clans, who are kind of like they're the Conan of the yard. They're the barbarians. And he also gets to meet kind of members of some of the other sects. Like we meet a wasp raider for the first time, and
Yeah.
one of the sisters of the spider, one of the witches of Weird Web, um, and then one of the ant generals is there too. And it's the end of issue 2 where kind of Slaymaker, the main character, really understands like what's happening here and what's about to happen to his family, and that he's going to have to, beyond just like, oh shit, I'm stuck here in the yard with all these bugs that want to kill me. How do I get out of here? He realizes there's more to it than that. Like he's going to have to fight to save his family. And that's the journey he goes on for the rest of this story. This book 1 is 6 issues.
Mm.
This first issue is basically like 2. It's almost 40 pages of
Yeah.
story, and then there's bonus material in the back. Each issue will have bonus like back matter pages where we dive into sort of the culture of a different sect of mites. In issue 1, you get kind of the culture of the ant imperium, and then you learn about some of the notable ant species you'll find there in the yard. And so every issue will have that kind of back matter. And issue 6 is oversized too. It's like 30 pages. So and that it is a story with a beginning, middle, and end, but it is also just a setup of introducing you to this world, introducing you to these characters, and then Mahmoud and I have a lot of plans for where things go from there in terms of exploring the story of Slade and his family and their history and connection to this yard. Questions of like, where the fuck did these tiny little people come from? Why are there tiny bug people in this one backyard in Alabama? And then we'll also stories that kind of explore some of these other characters that we meet along the way, like Wista, the Spider Witch, and Karim, who's the Swarm Lord of one of the Swarm Lords of the Beetle Riders, and then other characters and sects that we haven't even met yet, that you really kind of only glimpse in this story. Plus there are, as you'll see from that map, there are other parts of the yard that are as yet unexplored that we'll get to as well. So it's really like, Mahmoud and I created our own Middle Earth, our own Hyborian world, and just kind of beginning to explore.
Amazing. And how long have you been sitting on this idea, Jason, of this type of a story? Is this something that just came up in the last year or two, or have you kind of had this in your back pocket for a while and just the timing was right to put it on paper?
Yeah, I've had it in my back pocket for a long time. I mean, I literally think the origin of it goes back 40 years to when I was a kid, playing in that yard. And I read Sword of the Atom was one of the first books I read at DC back in the day, where Ray Palmer gets stuck. He gets struck by lightning, I think, or his plane does, and he crashes in the jungles of Brazil, and he's stuck at like the size of a, old school G.I. Joe figure. And he discovers this hidden city of these tiny aliens who live as barbarians and fight with swords, and they ride frogs, with saddles. And I loved that book. Again, that was one of those, it was the number one issue that I pulled off the spinner rack, like perfect jumping on point for a kid like me just starting to discover comics. And I think that kind of story sparked in my brain. And we've seen so many different versions of that kind of story over the years, from stories like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, where somebody shrinks down and goes on an adventure. And then also stories like The Borrowers or The Littles, where there's kind of hidden civilizations of tiny people, living in the walls of your house. And always loved that idea. I've always, for years, have been tinkering with kind of different versions of that. It's never anything I had pitched to anyone, never anything I'd put together before. It was just always kind of in the back of my head, like simmering away. And when Mahmoud and I did Conan and really loved it, and we started talking about doing something creator own, and he was interested in kind of doing stuff outside of Marvel, that was the first thing I thought of. And then we, again, worked for a long time, like building it, putting it together. But I do feel like it's something that has been in the works for 40 years. I mean, through those days of me as a kid playing in that yard, and then kind of, I think you can see elements of my entire career in this book. I think you see the kind of world building I did in Thor, and that sort of dark fantasy mixed with horror. You see some of that, and of course what I did in Conan. But it's also like a story of this family growing up in Alabama. So I think there's a little bit of Southern Bastards and Men of Wrath, and some of the more personal Southern books I've done too. So it's been in the works for a long time, but I think this is the perfect time for this book to have come together. And Mahmoud was a perfect co-creator for me to work with. So again, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about before, of sometimes you got to wait till the right moment. And this feels like the right moment. And to be launching this now, kind of after the year I had last year with launching Turtles and Absolute Superman, have this be kind of my first big new book of this year and first big new creator-owned book in a long time. So, we're very, very excited for people to finally get their hands on it.
Yeah, a creator like yourself who's been doing this for 20 years, and you've been able to touch so many amazing characters, Jason. After you get done with a run, are you able to kind of sit back and be satisfied with what you're able to accomplish, or are you kind of just moving on to the next thing? And if you are able to, where does something like this sit, since it has so much connection to your upbringing, your backyard, compared to some of the other stuff that you've done?
I mean, yeah, I think it's both. I think you want to be able to feel happy and proud of what you've done, and but you also don't spend time like dwelling on the past. I mean, it's always about like, what am I doing now? And when people ask me the thing I'm most proud of or excited about, I mean, my answer is pretty much always like what I'm working on now, which is not a phony answer. Like, it's very genuine. If it's not, then I think it's a problem. If I just feel like, if I'd rather be writing something again, that I wrote years ago, like I want to be most invested about what I'm doing right now in the moment. I've been perhaps lucky that I've always felt that way. But yeah, when you look back, I mean, I've been doing this a long time now. I've got, I mean, these shelves back here, mostly, well, these are full of ones. These are like full of ones I wrote, so like I've written a lot of stuff over the years. And so yeah, there are times you'd sit back and look, and some stand out as special, or just ones that you realize like, yeah, that one came together really great. Like I did the best version of my part of it, and then the art was incredible, and it's just like that one's the best version of what it could be. But I don't spend a lot of time dwelling on that. I'm especially these last couple of years, when I've been able to do so much stuff that's feels new and fresh. Like I've just been focusing on that. But but Bug Wars is special. One of those that you already know is special just because it is, as I have such a deep connection to it. It's had such a long time to percolate and simmer before it came together. And then I think also just being so proud and happy for what Mahmoud and Matt Wilson and our letterer and designer Becca Carey, who I'm also a huge fan of, like just the package that they were all able to put together. Like I got my comps of it last week. So holding it in my hand for the first time, when it's a book that I've read at this point, I've maybe read this comic more times than any comic I've ever written, because it's a fantasy story. It's my first like true, fantasy story that's mine. My first creator-owned fantasy story. And like with fantasy world building, there's so many things that are an important part of that, and some of that, a big part of that's the language and the names of things. So I have gone back into this story and script so many times to tweak things and change it. I've changed the names of characters and mites and locations and all that stuff just to get it the best version of what it could be. So I've read this thing a million times, and sometimes you get to that point where you're like, I don't know if this is any good or anymore. Like I've seen it so many times, I can't tell if this is good or terrible. But when I got my copies the other day, and you're holding it in your hand and flipping through it, I'm like, this is a good looking comic. Like we made a good comic. So like as the people in the trenches, you can feel it when it's coming together right, or when something's off, something's not quite clicking. You can feel that too, and so I think everybody who's involved with this book is really, really excited, and think people are going to dig it.
I think so. Quick question: what bug has been your favorite? So when you're playing in the backyard, was there a certain bug that you were always kind of messing around with, and did that make it into the title?
I mean, I wouldn't say I was a huge bug guy when I was playing around. Yeah. I mean, certainly I was rolling around in the grass, and I'd, lift up rocks and see what scurried out from underneath. But I don't know that I had a favorite bug. I mean, I think in this story, like, one of the main bugs that will follow, who's kind of becomes a character, is Slade's sort of favorite bug, which is a rhinoceros beetle. Yeah. It's, one of those beetles that's got a huge horn on the top of its head. I've got I can't remember what kind of beetle this is, but there's a giant beetle right there.
Yeah, rhinoceros, right? Rhinoceros beetle, I think they're called, right? Something like that.
Yeah, he's a European rhinoceros beetle, I believe.
Yeah.
And he's cool. But an issue, I think it's issue 4, we
Mhm.
get to meet the bombardier beetle, who is a beetle who, when threatened or riled, will spray acid from its butthole. So you know the like you that beetle would be scary if he was sitting here on my desk right now, right? But let alone if I'm the size of a mite, if I'm
Yeah.
the size of Slade Slaymaker, and that you're looking right in that acid filled butthole, like that's scary proposition. So that's kind of the world of the yard of what you'll be experiencing, and you'll get to meet. I mean, the my research shelf over here behind me is like filled with bug books. Um, so yeah, I know a lot more about beetles and ants than I did before.
That sounds fun, though. It is such a good title, Jason. I'm so happy for you that you've been able to work with such an amazing team to get this out. It comes out this Wednesday. So, man, everybody get into your local comic shop, pick this up. Now, you said this first arc is 6 issues, but will it be an ongoing or will it be 6 and a break and then 6 and a break, kind of like AWA and some of those other titles do it?
Yeah, it'll be 6 and then a break. We'll put the trade
Okay.
out, and then by the time we get to 6, you'll know kind of what the next thing is, and we'll mix it up. It's not going to be like every chunk is 6 issues. I think the next arc in terms of the story of Slade and his family will be a bigger story than this one. So it'll be a question of how we break that up. But I think you'll also see us doing other things in the middle there too. So I think you'll see some kind of oversized one shots and specials that'll be here's multiple stories about different characters from within this world, kind of sprinkled in the middle of the bigger narrative. Because there is a big overall narrative. There's kind of multiple stories I want to tell with Slade and his family and what they go through. But like I said, it's such a huge world, and there's so many other characters and so much in terms of the history of that world to explore. And I mean, my part, I've written this entire thing. Mahmoud's drawn almost all of it. He's working on issue 6 right now. So we're almost done with the entire thing before the first issue comes out. Um, so as soon as I finished that issue 6, I was bummed. I was disappointed because I've enjoyed it so much. So now I'm, ready to start writing what's next, because I don't want to leave this world. I'm having so much fun. Part of it, I do feel like this is the perfect time for me to do this book, but also I'm for a kid who grew up so in love with Conan and so in love
Yeah.
with fantasy stories. I'm like, why did I wait 20 years to do my own fantasy story? Because this is so much fun. Like I said, I fall down so many rabbit holes of obsessing over word usage and names for things, but at the same time, I love it.
Yeah, man, I think this really helps you draw out all those creative juices, right? Because although I would think Absolute Superman, just because it is, I don't know if you call it elsewhere, but it is, different from the main world. You're able to kind of do a little bit of what you're doing in Bug Worlds, right? Where you could bring in things that you think would be really interesting in that story. Whereas if you're doing some of the other titles like Namor and something like that, right, it already has so much history that you kind of have to stay a little close to that in order for that fan to recognize. I don't know if I'm making sense, but does that happen too with the
Yeah,
Absolute where you're able to do some of that?
I feel those books are all very different. I feel like with Namor, I've had a blast doing that book. I think issue 7 of that just came out, which is one I'm really proud of. And yeah, part of that book is the long history of that character. It's kind of one of Marvel's very first characters, and the path he's walked to get to the present day, which has been a very dark path for him. But that book also has a lot of new to it, and it's kind of exploring the undersea world of Marvel, which is a world you've seen so many times in different books. But it's one of those that sort of like when I took over Thor and was trying to figure out the Norse realms. They were
Yeah.
When books would go there, they would be different, right? They would look different, and there was kind of not always a lot of consistency over the years. So I wanted to kind of bring consistency on Thor, and it's been the same way with Namor. If I wanted to be like, this is the landscape of the underwater world. These are kind of different factions and different important parts of it, and this is, what the language they use. Like they, part of the book is telling you that there aren't 7 seas to them. They're like 700, because they of course they see the oceans in a completely different way than we do. So I've had a blast with that, just exploring that undersea world. Like that was, I kind of wrote all that before Bug Wars, and that was a good kind of precursor to. It felt like a lot of the stuff I had done on Thor, and I think helped me, like, as I started on Bug Wars, which this is like the pure uncut version of that. So yeah, I mean, I think all those books are super fun. What I'm getting to do on Superman does feel like very fresh and new, and we're telling stories we haven't seen before, but also getting to kind of pick and choose what toys we want to use, from the other universe, and really not just, I'm getting to build the Superman part of it, but then collectively all of us working on these books are getting to build the entire absolute universe, and like, what is the history of this place? Like, were there ever superheroes? If not, why? What happened to them? So those are questions we've only just started to kind of answer, and you'll be seeing soon. So all of that, everything I'm getting to work on feels very fresh and fun and new. So I'm kind of spoiled in that regard.
I think as readers, we're pretty spoiled too, Jason. You got a lot of amazing titles going on at the same time. And I would have to put you up there with one of the most popular creators over the last year and a half with all these titles that you've touched. So congratulations on all the success. Well deserved. Obviously, you worked really hard for that. And I cannot wait for Bug Wars. I do want to be super respectful of your time. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you giving me a little over an hour of your time to be able to talk about all these amazing titles that you're touching. And of course, everyone that's watching, please get to your local comic book shop this Wednesday, Bug Wars issue 1. Make sure that you pick it up. There are, I think, 6 different covers, so collect them all. And I think this is going to be a title that we'll be talking about in the next year and a half or so, going, dang, I cannot believe where it started and where we're currently at. And I cannot wait for that. And I hope, Jason, that we could have you back when we're having that conversation, so we could kind of get a feel for where you're at and what you're thinking around Bug Wars again.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. Yeah, I haven't I got this news today, so I haven't told anybody yet. So this will be a secret. Let's all keep it secret. But Bug Wars #1 is sold out. So at the distributor level. So so make sure you get to your comic book store on Wednesday and grab a copy before they're all gone.
Yeah, and as a reminder, if you do not want to be left out, you could always add it to your pull list. That helps the retailer out, helps the distributor out, and obviously ensures that you have that first print, so you're not waiting around for a second print. But that's always a good problem to have, Jason, when it has to go to a second print. That's pretty amazing. Right. Like, what print are you on issue 1 of Absolute? 3, 4?
I think 3. Yeah, I think 3 just came out. It's about to come out. Yeah, Batman's up to like 4 or 5, I think.
Yeah. Incredible, man. The Absolute universe has just been so much fun, and I cannot wait for all the new titles coming out. But man, Jason, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share your story with everybody, and I hope that we could do this again, my friend.
Cheers. Yeah, I would love to. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. I wish you a great week, and we will talk soon.
Cool.
All right, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.